Picture this: a sprawling, sun-kissed vineyard on the outskirts of Napa Valley, rows of neatly trimmed grapevines rolling out beneath an azure sky. Lanterns twinkle in the gentle breeze as an opulent wedding ceremony unfolds, complete with a string quartet serenading the crowd of high-profile guests. The groom, millionaire, real estate mogul Tristan Alcott stands proud at the altar, awaiting his bride. Little does he know the entrance gates are about to burst open, revealing a pregnant woman clutching the hands of two identical twin boys. Her eyes blaze with fury, and her name is Ava Carter, Tristan's legal wife. What happens next will leave everyone speechless. Tristan Alcott was never just another billionaire. His name was synonymous with wealth, power, and scandal. Born to a modest family in Long Island, Tristan clawed his way to success through a combination of ambition, charm, and relentless ruthlessness. By the time he turned 35, he owned Alcott and Roth Holdings, a real estate empire expanding across Los Angeles, New York, and even parts of London. His name regularly popped up in Forbes magazine and on the lips of real estate tycoons like Donald Bren and Stephen Ross, people he occasionally outbid on multi-million-dollar properties. But Tristan's success came at a high price. Marriage to Ava Carter, the brilliant but soft-spoken daughter of a retired senator, was supposed to cement his social standing. Ava was pregnant with their first child when Tristan's wandering eye led him astray. One night at an exclusive art exhibition in Beverly Hills, Tristan met Helene Garcia, a sultry, cunning interior designer who had a reputation for seducing wealthy men to climb the social ladder. That night, Tristan made a choice that would change his life forever. Ava Carter had grown up sheltered in Washington, D.C., under the watchful eye of her father, Senator Donovan Carter, and her philanthropic mother, Lucille. She studied fine arts, harbored a love for painting, and once dreamed of hosting exhibitions in Paris. Though she inherited her parents' sophistication and generosity, Ava lacked the cunning needed to navigate the cutthroat upper echelons of high society. When she met Tristan at a charity gala in Manhattan, Ava was swept off her feet by his confidence and the allure of his unstoppable success. They married at the Ritz-Carlton, overlooking Central Park, with guests including business magnates and political figures. Everyone believed Tristan and Ava were an unbreakable power couple. Behind the polished facade, however, cracks formed. Tristan's late nights at business events became more frequent. Ava, pregnant and lonely, clung to the hope that Tristan was just busy expanding their empire. Little did she know the truth. Helene Garcia was the reason. Helene Garcia emerged from a world as different from Ava's as night from day. Raised in a working-class neighborhood of Miami, Helene was determined never to return to the hardships of her youth. She leveraged her striking beauty and uncanny knack for interior design to infiltrate elite circles. After completing a design apprenticeship with a renowned architect in South Beach, Helene cultivated a private client list that read like a who's who of the rich and famous, including celebrities like Jennifer Lopez and NBA players with mega mansions. In a fateful twist, one of Helene's high-profile gigs took her to Tristan's West Hollywood penthouse to reimagine the living space. The minute she stepped inside, Tristan saw in Helene the spark he felt Ava had lost. Helene, instantly recognizing Tristan's standing, began a dance of seduction, wearing tight outfits, lingering touches, sultry gazes. By the time Helene finalized design proposals, Tristan was powerless to resist her charms. Their affair officially began. Once Helene sunk her claws into Tristan, everything escalated at breakneck speed. Lavish dinners at Mastro's in Beverly Hills, secret weekends on his yacht off the coast of Catalina Island, expensive gifts from Harry Winston. Tristan spared no expense to ensure Helene's affection. Fearing paparazzi, Tristan secured a discreet penthouse in downtown LA, where he could hide their rendezvous far from Ava's prying eyes. They furnished the luxurious hideaway with plush velvet sofas, imported marble, and Helene's personal design touches that exuded seductive elegance. Meanwhile, Ava felt her husband slipping away. His excuses became repetitive. "I have a late meeting," or "There's an urgent conference call with a London investor." Through it all, Ava's pregnancy advanced quietly. She tried to rationalize Tristan's behavior as business obligations. Yet a seed of suspicion began to grow in her mind, urged on by her best friend Isabel, who suspected Tristan might be involved with another woman. Ava was never the type to spy on her husband until desperation took hold. One evening, after Tristan stormed out following a trivial argument about his constant absences, Ava decided enough was enough. She rummaged through Tristan's desk for clues. Among old receipts from Nobu Malibu and a few business contracts, she found a key with a small fob labeled Skyline Lofts. With trembling fingers, she searched the name online. Skyline Lofts was a luxury residential tower in downtown LA, famous for its 50th floor penthouses. A feeling of dread tore through her chest. Spurred by a mixture of fear and righteous anger, Ava decided to drive there. Parking discreetly, she took the elevator up to the penthouse suite. What she saw through the half-open door shattered her world. Tristan in a passionate embrace with a woman who could only be Helene Garcia. Ava's heartbreak was so profound, she nearly fainted in the hallway. Shaken to her core, Ava retreated without confronting them. If she had walked in, she feared the scene might become explosive, and she was certain stress wouldn't be good for her unborn child. Once home, she found herself spiraling through confusion and devastation. How could Tristan do this to her while she was carrying his baby? What would her father, the esteemed Senator Carter, say if he discovered the betrayal? Overnight, Ava made a decision she never thought she'd have to make. She packed her essentials and sought refuge at her family's estate in Washington, D.C. She left a terse note for Tristan on the granite kitchen counter. "I know everything. I'm leaving. Do not contact me until you figure yourself out." Initially, she had no intention of divorcing him outright, but she needed space. She needed to protect her heart and her unborn child from the toxicity of Tristan's lies. When Tristan discovered Ava's note the next morning, he stood in the kitchen for a long time, unreadable. Helena was calling his phone, but it kept vibrating unanswered on the countertop. The next few weeks brought chaos. Tristan, entangled in guilt and confusion, oscillated between calling Ava non-stop and drowning himself in Helene's presence. Helene, always calculating, saw an opportunity. With Ava gone, Helene had a clearer path to claim Tristan's heart, his fortune, and his powerful last name. She whispered promises of support, love, and a glittering future. Tristan, lonely and wounded by Ava's abrupt departure, found a twisted sense of solace in Helene's arms. Behind the scenes, Helene began to spin stories. She told Tristan that Ava had always been too fragile for the demands of his lifestyle. She reminded him that if Ava truly loved him, she wouldn't abandon him in his time of need. Under Helene's influence, Tristan's remorse began to cloud over with anger toward his wife. He rationalized Ava's decision to leave as an overreaction and convinced himself that if she wouldn't stand by him, she didn't deserve him. Meanwhile, Ava remained in Washington, quietly carrying twins, an unexpected bombshell revealed during her doctor's visit. While in D.C., Ava visited Dr. Alexander Friedman, one of the leading OB-GYNs in the area. She learned that she wasn't carrying just one child, but two. The revelation turned her heartbreak into a dual sense of responsibility and wonder. She started seeing a therapist to help her process her tumultuous emotions. Senator Donovan Carter. Her father offered unwavering support, albeit with a quiet rage simmering beneath his stoic exterior. He and Lucille swore to protect Ava and their soon-to-arrive grandchildren from whatever storms Tristan might bring. Simultaneously, news reached Ava that Tristan was seen publicly with Helene at an NBA All-Star after-party in Los Angeles. Photographs surfaced in tabloids. Tristan's hand possessively around Helene's waist. Helene leaning her head on his shoulder, both smiling for cameras in front of a gold-plated step and repeat. Rumors sparked that they were engaged. Though unconfirmed, social media buzzed with speculation. It felt like a final slap in Ava's face, a testament to Tristan's complete disregard for the marriage vows they had once exchanged. One fateful night, Senator Carter hosted a black-tie fundraising event in Washington to support underprivileged youth. Ava, 6 months pregnant, attended wearing a flowing emerald gown that did little to hide her prominent belly. She tried her best to maintain composure, greeting donors and shaking hands with diplomats. But her mind was elsewhere, swirling with thoughts of Tristan's betrayal and Helene's flaunting. Midway through the evening, Ava received a text from her friend Isabel, back in Los Angeles. Rumor says Tristan's wedding is set for next month at a vineyard in Napa. Are you okay? Ava's heart nearly stopped. She rushed to the ladies' room, tears threatening to spill over. She called Tristan's phone, determined to get answers. He didn't pick up. The next day, official confirmations splashed across the gossip columns. Tristan Alcott and Helene Garcia were engaged, with a wedding planned at a private estate in Napa Valley. Ava realized this nightmare was far from over. Not long after the engagement news broke, Tristan found himself cornered by reporters from TMZ outside a Beverly Hills restaurant. They peppered him with questions. What about your marriage to Ava Carter? Is it really over? When did you propose to Helene? Tristan brushed them off with a smug grin and a vague statement about complicated personal matters. He refused to officially confirm a wedding date, yet rumors continued to swirl. Meanwhile, Helena was busy orchestrating the grand celebration. She contacted an exclusive wedding planner, famed for throwing events for Hollywood's A-list people like George Clooney and Beyoncé. The guest list ballooned to 200 elite names, from real estate tycoons to celebrities Helene had rubbed shoulders with. Helene insisted on having the ceremony at a picturesque Napa Valley vineyard owned by the esteemed Carter Morris family, whom she didn't realize were acquaintances of Senator Carter's. The irony was thick, but Helene was ignorant of the subtle landmines beneath high society connections. In the weeks leading to the wedding, Tristan was far from the happy groom he pretended to be. Yes, Helene satiated his desire for excitement, but a nagging guilt gnawed at him each night. He found himself waking up in cold sweats, dreaming of the moment Ava discovered him with Helene. Worse yet, sometimes he dreamed of twin babies looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes, babies that looked hauntingly like him. He drank more than usual, sometimes disappearing into the corner of his penthouse to brood. Helene noticed his restlessness, but dismissed it as pre-wedding jitters. To quell his anxiety, Tristan immersed himself in business, closing a multi-million-dollar deal in Chicago and planning expansions in Asia. Work was his escape. Yet at odd moments, a random commercial about fatherhood. A toddler waddling across the sidewalk, he felt a sharp pang of remorse. The life he once envisioned with Ava was now shattered, replaced by an opulent facade that didn't feel as fulfilling as he had expected. Back in Washington, Ava watched wedding announcements flood social media. Helene flaunting an enormous diamond ring, rumored to be from Cartier, pictures of the vineyard ceremony, set up glimpses of gold-embossed invitations. Each image and video hammered at Ava's heart, but also fueled her determination. She had been quietly listening to her attorney's advice and collecting evidence for a divorce settlement that would ensure the future of her unborn children. Tristan might have chosen Helene, but Ava refused to let him pretend she never existed. Every day, she felt the twins kicking and moving inside her, a constant reminder that she was carrying not just any children, but Tristan Alcott's heirs, two potential inheritors of the empire he had built. The injustice of him planning a whole new life without addressing his responsibilities to her and their babies was infuriating. For the sake of her twins, Ava made a bold decision. She would attend the wedding. Even if it meant facing heartbreak, she'd make Tristan confront the reality he so eagerly buried. Senator Carter used his political connections to quietly glean details about Tristan's upcoming nuptials. While the senator initially advised Ava against confrontation, "It's not worth the stress on you and the twins." He'd say he also understood that sometimes the truth needed to be faced head-on. He arranged for a private security team to accompany Ava if she indeed chose to attend the ceremony. Meanwhile, Helene bragged to her inner circle about how she was about to bag one of the richest men in America. She took every opportunity to flaunt the wedding details, from the 5-tier cake from a high-end bakery in Napa to her custom-designed Vera Wang gown. Gossip columnists reported on Helene's ruthless ambition, hinting at the possibility that she orchestrated everything from the start. In hushed corners of Beverly Hills restaurants, old money families expressed shock. "He's still married to Ava, isn't he?" But Tristan, shielded by Helene's manipulations, pressed forward. Little did he know that Ava was preparing to do something no one saw coming. The sun rose gloriously over the rows of grapevines in Napa Valley, painting the morning sky with oranges and pinks. Vendors bustled around, setting up lavish floral arrangements made of white orchids and roses. In the courtyard, a string quartet rehearsed Pachelbel's canon. Celebrity chefs curated a menu featuring gourmet canapés and expensive champagne from France. Wedding guests began to arrive, stepping out of sleek black limousines in designer gowns and tuxedos. Tristan dressed in a custom Armani suit that fit him like a second skin. Helene, in a Vera Wang masterpiece, examined herself in the mirror and smirked at her own reflection. Everything was perfect, she thought. Nothing could go wrong now. She'd made sure paparazzi were kept at bay. Each guest had a seating chart, and an army of event staff stood ready to attend to any last-minute needs. Among those heading to the ceremony, however, was a woman in a dark sedan with tinted windows, carrying the ultimate shock factor, a heavily pregnant Ava Carter, flanked by discreet security. And in the back seat, with her 2 identical twin boys, her and Tristan's children, delivered prematurely, just a week earlier. A twist of fate had changed Ava's plan. In the final month of her pregnancy, Ava went into labor sooner than expected, 8 weeks early. For 2 frantic days, she had been in the hospital under the care of Dr. Friedman. Despite the premature delivery, the twins, Logan and Leon, were healthy and strong. Ava barely had time to rest before she learned the wedding date had been moved forward, likely to preempt any legal interference. Despite postpartum exhaustion, Ava's conviction only grew stronger. She refused to let Tristan get away with discarding his fatherly responsibilities. Senator Carter tried to dissuade her, concerned for her health, but once Ava set her mind on something, she wouldn't budge. So here she was, just days after giving birth, traveling to Napa with her newborn boys in tow. "I need him to see what he's leaving behind," she whispered resolutely. No one realized how her arrival would shake the entire foundation of Tristan and Helene's carefully constructed fairy tale. As the clock struck noon, the wedding began. Guests gathered before a stunning flower arch, cameras discreetly capturing every moment. Helene glided down the aisle, her gown shimmering in the midday sunlight, an ethereal vision of elegance. Tristan stood at the altar, stiff with anticipation. His gaze flicked over the sea of faces, searching for something or someone that he couldn't quite name. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking about love commitment and the sanctity of marriage. Tristan couldn't stop the sudden thudding in his chest as images of Ava flashed in his mind unbidden. Her laugh, her tearful eyes the day he proposed the baby bump he once placed his hand on. Guilt snaked its way around his heart. Just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, the vineyard gates swung open. The sound of heavy wooden doors colliding echoed, drawing every eye to the entrance. There stood Ava Carter, hair wind-blown, eyes blazing, holding the handles of a double stroller, two identical infant boys, tucked beneath a canopy of blankets. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. For a moment, no one moved. The wedding party froze, cameras stopped clicking, and even the gentle breeze through the vines seemed to pause. Tristan felt his heart pound so violently he thought it might burst through his chest. Helene's eyes narrowed into furious slits, the color draining from her face. Ava, though trembling with lingering postpartum weakness, refused to cower. She walked slowly forward, flanked by her security detail, who parted the stunned guests like a prow cutting through water. Reaching the foot of the altar, she met Tristan's eyes. There was pain, betrayal, and a steely determination in her gaze. "These are your sons," Ava announced, her voice carrying across the silent vineyard. "Logan and Leon, twins, born 8 days ago." Murmurs and gasps swept through the crowd. Helena's nostrils flared, and Tristan simply stared speechless eyes, transfixed on the two tiny forms in the stroller. Helene broke the silence first. "How dare you?" she hissed, her composure unraveling. "This is our wedding. You have no right to be here." Her voice, once sweet and refined, cracked with venom. Ava leveled a gaze at Helene. "I have every right," she said. "I'm still his wife." That revelation caused an explosion of hushed whispers among the onlookers. The officiant's eyes went wide, flipping through the marriage documents, as if searching for an explanation. Journalists from the Hollywood Chronicle, invited under strict secrecy, started jotting furious notes. Their cameras zoomed in on the drama unfolding. Tristan felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He stared at the stroller, at the infants he never knew had been born. His fatherly instincts battled with his guilt-shame and the fear that Helene would lash out. When the silence became unbearable, Ava demanded, "Tristan, look at your sons. Acknowledge them before all these people." Something in Tristan shattered. All the bravado, the arrogance, the desire to bury his guilt collapsed under the weight of seeing his newborns. Without a word, he stepped away from Helene, ignoring the outraged gasp that fell from her lips. Kneeling beside the stroller, he reached out a tentative finger to stroke Logan's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled reflexively around his. The moment was pure electricity, a father's heart blossoming in an instant. Tears pricked Tristan's eyes as he looked up at Ava. Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered, voice trembling. Ava let out a shaky sigh. You never gave me the chance, Tristan. You left us. I called and you ignored me. You were too busy flaunting your affair to notice I'd gone into early labor. And then I hear you're marrying her. She cast a scornful glance at Helene. You thought I'd just let you walk away from your family without consequences. Helene's hands shook, but her rage blazed. Stop this! She screamed. Consumed by fury, Helene stormed down the steps of the altar and reached for Tristan, forcibly pulling him away from the stroller. You are humiliating me, she spat. I've given up everything for you, my reputation, my career, aspirations to be with you. You promised me the world. Tristan. Her chest heaved with indignation, the polished veneer of her persona falling away. Tristan tried to steady her, but Helene wrenched free. We have a ceremony to finish. You can handle your ex and those kids later. She demanded, her eyes flitting to the crowd, as if aware that the entire fiasco was being recorded. Ava stiffened, arms folding protectively across her chest. Her security detail circled closer, worried that Helene might lash out physically. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like even the leaves on the vines had halted in suspense. Whispers among the guests turned to quiet condemnation. Many recognized Ava from her philanthropic work, and her pregnancy, now evident in the form of newborns, evoked deep sympathy. At that moment, something in Tristan's eyes changed. He brushed Helene's arm aside and turned to face the congregation of shocked onlookers. I can't continue this ceremony, he said, voice taut with emotion. An uneasy murmur spread through the crowd. Even the officiant appeared visibly relieved, sensing the moral quagmire. Helene's face twisted in horror. What are you talking about? She hissed, her voice a furious whisper. We've planned everything. My dress, the guests, the media coverage, everything is set. Tristan clenched his jaw, finally finding the courage to speak the words he should have spoken months ago. I'm still married to Ava, he said, projecting his voice so the entire vineyard could hear. I never finalized any divorce. I've wronged her. I've neglected her. And I have a responsibility. To her, to my sons. Helene looked as though she had been slapped. Murmurs of approval and astonishment rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed, capturing every second. Senator Carter, discreetly seated in the back row, gave a subtle nod of vindication. Ava simply stared, her breath catching in her throat. If there was one thing Helene Garcia knew how to do, it was to take advantage of any situation. Watching Tristan's resolve, she felt her dreams and ambitions slipping away. Rage mingled with desperation. She lunged for the microphone from the officiant voice, echoing through the speakers. Don't you all see? She cried dramatically. Ava left him. She took off without a word, made no attempt to reconcile, and only shows up now at my wedding, because she wants to stake a claim on Tristan's fortune. How convenient that she appears with twin boys, just as we're about to finalize a marriage that could threaten her inheritance. A wave of gasps swept across the assembled guests. Even Tristan seemed momentarily rattled by Helene's insinuation. Ava's cheeks flamed. She wanted to shout back that she left because Tristan was unfaithful, that she'd tried calling, that she had discovered his affair in the worst way imaginable. But Helene's words stung with a twisted plausibility, causing some guests to waver uncertainly. With trembling hands, Ava stepped forward and faced Helene. Yes, I left him, she acknowledged, letting her voice resonate. Because I found them together in his secret penthouse. Because my husband, she paused, a quiver in her tone, chose to be with another woman while I was pregnant with his children. The hush grew deeper, and even Helene seemed taken aback by the raw honesty. Ava continued. I called Tristan multiple times when I went into labor. He never answered. Meanwhile, he was planning this wedding. She turned to the crowd. Does this sound like a woman chasing fortune to you? Or is it the story of a wife betrayed fighting for her children's right to a father? A few scattered claps broke out. Helene's face darkened. She glanced at Tristan, silently begging him to deny Ava's account. But Tristan's silence was damning. Every guest could see the shame etched in his face, the regret swirling in his eyes. The story was plain for all to see. Tristan had lied to both women, but the children were innocent victims. Realizing the tide of public sympathy had turned against her, Helene tried one last desperate angle. Tristan, you can't do this to me, she yelled. We have a legally binding contract for this event. Deposits paid, endorsements lined up. You promised me we'd build a brand together. Interior design meets real estate. Are you really going to throw it all away for a woman who deserted you? Tristan swallowed hard, turning to Helene. I'm sorry, he managed, voice shaking. But I can't go through with this wedding. Not today. Not like this. He closed his eyes, releasing a ragged breath, before softly adding, perhaps not ever. Helene stared at him, tears of outrage brimming. She hurled her bouquet to the ground, petals scattering across the pristine aisle. Then she made a curt gesture to a group of her friends, storming back up the aisle in a flurry of tulle and fury. The event staff exchanged nervous looks as Helene's entourage hustled after her cell phones out, presumably calling lawyers or publicists. A surreal hush fell over the vineyard, broken only by the rustling of vines and soft cooing from the stroller. The officiant cleared his throat and quietly closed his ceremonial book. Guests began to file out, uncertain whether they should leave immediately or offer support. Some discreetly offered Ava a nod or a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. The cameras from the Hollywood Chronicle and a handful of other media outlets were still rolling, capturing every second of this sensational collapse. Senator Carter emerged from the back row and stood protectively beside Ava, his posture regal, his glare daring anyone to so much as whisper a word against his daughter. Tristan lingered near the altar, shoulders, slumped eyes on the ground. He seemed like a man who had just awakened from a fever dream, realizing the devastation he'd wrought. Meanwhile, Ava, drained by the intensity of the moment and her recent childbirth, simply closed her eyes, praying for the strength to face what came next. In the next hours, chaos reigned. Caterers scrambled to pack up leftover delicacies. The string quartet quietly wrapped up their instruments, and the wedding planner stared in disbelief as her masterpiece disintegrated around her. Helicopters from local news stations buzzed overhead, hungry for footage of the collapsed ceremony. Helene barricaded herself in a dressing suite, sobbing hysterically into her phone. Reports said she demanded her legal team sue Tristan for breach of contract and emotional distress. She threatened to release tell-all interviews, painting Ava as the manipulative wife who refused Tristan a divorce. Some staff overheard her screeching about making them all pay. But behind all the spectacle and legal threats, the real drama centered on Ava Tristan and the newborn twins. Ava was whisked away to a quieter corner of the vineyard, where paramedics on standby for such high-profile events examined her and the babies. Tristan, looking more human than ever, hovered nearby, torn between wanting to apologize and fearing Ava's understandable wrath. Eventually, Senator Carter stepped aside, giving Tristan and Ava a moment alone beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree. The twins rested in a carriage watched over by Ava's security detail. Tristan searched Ava's eyes, his own brimming with regret. "I'm so sorry," he started. I thought you left because you didn't love me anymore. Helene told me you were just using me for my money, that you couldn't handle the pressure of my lifestyle. Ava let out a bitter laugh. And you believed her? She gestured toward the carriage. Look at them. They are your children, Tristan. I would never choose to do this alone. But you gave me no choice. Tristan swallowed hard tears, threatening to fall. I was an idiot. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I even deserve another chance. Ava looked away, blinking back her own tears. Maybe you don't, she whispered. But those boys deserve a father, and I'll do whatever it takes to ensure they have one. By evening, the story had spread like wildfire. Every major outlet, from E! News to CNN, covered the dramatic collapse of millionaire Tristan Alcott's wedding. Hashtags like #wedding. Disaster, nurtured Ava returns, and twin bombshell trended on social media. Late-night talk show hosts cracked jokes while scandal-hungry tabloids plastered front pages with images of Ava pushing the twin stroller into the ceremony. The Alcott and Roth Holdings board was livid, worried about the impact on their brand. Share prices dipped briefly as investors questioned Tristan's judgment. Helene, determined to steer public sympathy, leaked stories to certain gossip sites, claiming that Ava orchestrated the entire drama for maximum publicity. In Washington, Senator Carter held a private press conference, delivering a measured statement that his daughter Ava was simply asserting her rights as a wife and mother, and that anyone painting her as an opportunist would face legal consequences. Public sentiment largely sided with Ava. Mothers across the country empathized with her, outraged on her behalf. Corporate sponsors of Helene's designs began quietly distancing themselves. Searing with humiliation, Helene launched a vicious campaign to salvage her reputation. She hired a crisis management firm and threatened to sue the vineyard owners for allowing Ava to trespass and disrupt her wedding. The Carter-Morris family politely reminded her that given her fiancé was still legally married, the event itself was on shaky legal ground. They also hinted that Senator Carter was a long-time family friend. Helene's fury only grew. She posted cryptic social media updates, accusing an unnamed vindictive woman of orchestrating a spectacle. She teased a possible book deal or reality show that would expose high society secrets. But behind the cameras and curated posts, Helene felt the sting of betrayal. Her phone calls to Tristan went straight to voicemail. Executives who once courted her design expertise cancelled projects. The carefully constructed persona she'd built was crumbling, and she blamed Ava for everything. While Helene raged, Ava focused on her sons. She extended her stay in Napa to ensure the twins were safe and stable. Dr. Friedman flew in from Washington to monitor them, given their premature birth. Ava spent sleepless nights feeding and changing diapers, but she didn't complain. Each time she cradled Logan or Leon in her arms, she felt a surge of maternal protectiveness that overshadowed her heartbreak. Meanwhile, Tristan hovered on the periphery, uncertain of his place. Ava, though civil for the twins' sake, kept her emotional distance. She set firm boundaries, insisting he address his moral and legal obligations before she would consider any further reconciliation. Their lawyers began drafting documents to formalize a separation agreement, one that guaranteed Ava financial security for the twins. In quiet moments, Ava allowed herself to grieve. She had loved Tristan deeply, believed in his ambition, supported his dreams. Now she carried the weight of his betrayal like an anchor around her heart, and yet she resolved to remain strong for Logan and Leon. In the aftermath of the wedding debacle, Tristan found himself alone in the opulent penthouse he once shared with Helene. The sumptuous decor that once felt thrilling now reminded him of his shame. Wine bottles lay half empty on the marble counters. Late at night, he scrolled through photos of the aborted wedding. Helene's furious eyes staring back at him. Ava's pained expression an even sharper blow. One day, in a rare burst of self-awareness, Tristan packed a small duffel bag and drove to a secluded retreat in Big Sur, a place he used to visit before his meteoric rise. There, overlooking the rugged coastline, Tristan confronted his past. He realized that in his pursuit of wealth and status, he'd discarded every moral anchor he once had. He spent days journaling, even calling a therapist recommended by an old friend. Slowly, he acknowledged that he had lost not only Ava's trust, but his own sense of self-worth. A week later, Ava was tending to the twins in her rented Napa cottage when she heard a knock at the door. Opening it, she was startled to find Tristan looking uncharacteristically disheveled stubble on his chin, dark circles under his eyes. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," he said quietly, hands in his pockets. I needed to see them. And you." For a moment, Ava contemplated sending him away, not wanting to risk another emotional upheaval. But a whisper of compassion nudged her. She stepped aside, allowing him in. He approached the living room where Leon lay sleeping in a bassinet, and Logan was propped on a small cushion, wide-eyed. Tristan's eyes filled with tears as he gently picked up Logan, cradling him against his chest. "Hey, buddy," he murmured. Ava watched her heart torn between anger and the memory of why she once loved this man. In that delicate moment, the house was filled with the quiet breathing of a father holding his child for the first time. They spoke cautiously, carefully. Tristan explained his time in Big Sur, confessing how he finally understood the depth of his wrongdoing. He admitted that no explanation could justify his betrayal, but he wanted to make amends, starting with being a proper father to the twins. Ava listened, her arms folded. "I appreciate the effort," she said evenly. "But I can't just forget everything that happened. The hurt is still there, Tristan. And Helene. She's not going to let this go." Tristan sighed, eyes downcast. "I'm prepared to deal with whatever Helene throws at me. Legally, financially, whatever it takes. I want to do right by you and the boys. If you want a divorce, I won't contest it. But I want to be part of their lives. I beg you not to shut me out." Ava's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. "We'll need a parenting plan," she said finally. "And I'll need to see real change before I consider anything more than co-parenting. That's the only way forward." Just as Tristan and Ava began to chart a fragile path forward, Helene Garcia unleashed her final trump card. She sued Tristan for breach of promise, claiming she had invested substantial time and resources into their wedding and future business ventures based on his assurances they would wed. She demanded millions in damages. Simultaneously, Helena granted an exclusive interview to a sensationalist talk show, painting herself as the spurned fiancée. She wept on camera, recounting how Tristan had tricked her into believing his marriage to Ava was effectively over. She called the twin drama a sick ploy orchestrated by Ava to sabotage her happiness. Ratings soared as the interview aired, splitting public opinion. Some viewers sympathized with Helene, while others saw her as the manipulative interloper that she was. Tristan's lawyers assured him that Helene's case was weak. No formal contract existed for any future businesses, and wedding expenses were usually non-recoverable. Still, the media storm threatened to overshadow his attempts at reconciliation with Ava. Ava watched Helene's interview with a mixture of anger and pity. She knew better than anyone how persuasive Helene could be, but she also trusted that anyone who truly knew her family and her character would see through Helene's theatrics. Senator Carter rallied behind his daughter. He released a statement confirming that Ava had tried multiple times to contact Tristan about her pregnancy, providing phone records and text messages as evidence. The statement carefully avoided mentioning Helene's name, focusing instead on Ava's willingness to co-parent and ensure the twins had a stable life. Buoyed by her father's support and Tristan's newfound humility, Ava found the strength to resist Helene's narrative. She refused interview requests, maintaining her dignity with silence. If anything, Helene's desperation only drew more public scrutiny of her background, with old acquaintances emerging to share stories of how Helene manipulated wealthy men for personal gain. As the tide turned, Helene's vitriol lost its sting. One crisp morning, Tristan invited Ava and the twins to the Alcott family estate in upstate New York, a serene property inherited from his grandparents. The estate, lush with willows and rolling lawns, offered a tranquil escape from the paparazzi-laden chaos of California. Ava hesitated, but eventually agreed, seeing it as a chance for the twins to bond with their father in a peaceful setting. Under the shade of a large oak tree, Tristan arranged a picnic. He had the staff prepare simple, comforting dishes, Ava's favorite tomato bisque soup and fresh garden salad. As the twins dozed in their carrier, Tristan kneeled before Ava. "I don't expect forgiveness," he began, voice trembling with sincerity. "But I need you to know I'm ending all ties with Helene. My lawyers are handling her lawsuit, and I'm prepared to clear any financial debts I might owe. I have no desire to fight her publicly. My focus is on you, Logan, and Leon. I want to be the man you once believed I was." Ava regarded him carefully, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. "It's not easy to erase the past," she cautioned. "We might never go back to how things were." Tristan nodded, gaze earnest. "I understand. I want us to build something new, something better, if you'll allow it. And if not, then I'll still be here for the boys." Slowly, Ava placed her hand in his. They sat on the grass, talking long into the afternoon, about old memories, lost dreams, and future hopes. They reminisced about the time they first met at a charity gala, how Ava wore a gold dress Tristan couldn't take his eyes off. They talked about the possibility of therapy, about co-parenting schedules, about how they could integrate their two worlds if they could. While no magical balm instantly healed their wounds, each word exchanged was a step toward a bridge that might just hold their family together. Over the following months, Helene's lawsuit went to court, only to be promptly dismissed by the judge, who cited insufficient legal grounds for her claims. Bitter and desperate, Helene attempted to leak more stories about Tristan's alleged financial improprieties, but none gained traction. The Alcott and Roth Holdings board demanded Tristan publicly address the allegations. In a carefully orchestrated press conference, Tristan acknowledged his personal failings, but denied any wrongdoing in business. He presented transparent financial records, and a forensic audit cleared him of Helene's insinuations. Meanwhile, Ava maintained a low profile. She focused on the twins, who were thriving and growing quickly, charming everyone around them with bright smiles and playful curiosity. The tabloids gradually lost interest in the scandal once Helene's lawsuit fell apart. Another celebrity drama replaced it in the ever-churning news cycle, granting Ava and Tristan the precious commodity of relative privacy. Yet the question remained, would Ava forgive Tristan and rebuild their marriage, or would they part ways on amicable terms for the sake of the twins? The golden leaves of autumn rustled gently outside Senator Carter's grand estate in Washington, D.C., as the sun dipped low on the horizon. Inside the stately home, the fireplace crackled softly, casting flickering light on the rich wood paneling and plush rugs. In the living room, Logan and Leon squealed with laughter as they crawled across the carpet, chasing after a plush elephant toy. Their tiny giggles filled the space with warmth, a sound that wrapped around everyone like a blanket of hope. Lucille Carter cooed over the boys, showering them with grandmotherly affection. Across the room, Senator Donovan Carter sat in his leather wingback chair, silent but observant. He had witnessed enough politics and scandal in his life to know when a storm was truly passing and when the rebuilding could begin. After dinner, Ava stepped out onto the wide marble balcony, the evening breeze tousling her hair. The garden below shimmered with fairy lights, strung along trimmed hedges, a subtle touch added by Lucille to welcome the season. The air smelled of pine and distant wood smoke. Tristan followed a few steps behind, hesitating at the threshold. "Is this a bad time?" he asked gently. Ava didn't turn around immediately. "It's as good a time as any." He stepped beside her in silence, both of them staring out at the darkening garden. It had been weeks since the wedding fiasco, weeks of tense conversations, legal logistics, and moments of bittersweet connection. But nothing had been decided. Not really. "I've been thinking a lot," Ava finally said, her voice quiet. "Not just about us, about what kind of life I want for the twins. What kind of example I want to set for love, for forgiveness, for strength." Tristan's jaw tightened. He braced himself for the verdict. "I've spoken to my therapist," Ava continued. "I've prayed. I've cried more nights than I care to admit. But I've also watched you change, slowly. And I believe it's real." He turned to her, hope blooming in his chest. But she said, holding up a finger, "This is not a fairy tale, Tristan. What happened between us can't be erased with an apology or a romantic gesture. Trust isn't a door we just walk back through. It's a house we have to rebuild, brick by brick." "I understand," he said, his voice low. "And I'm willing to do that work. I swear it." Ava turned to face him at last. Her expression was still guarded, but there was something new in her eyes. Softness. Perhaps not forgiveness, but the willingness to begin again. "I never wanted my children to grow up in a broken home," she said, "but I also refused to raise them in a lie. If we're going to move forward, it has to be different, transparent, patient, real." Tristan reached for her hand, and after a long pause, she let him take it. "Then let's try," she whispered. "Not because it's easy and not because everything's magically better, but because deep down, we both still want this." He nodded, eyes misting. Together, Ava gave a slow, tentative smile. Together. Behind them, the laughter of their sons echoed through the open balcony doors, a sound that reminded them both that love, however battered, still had the power to bloom again. The wind whispered gently through the bare trees of upstate New York, their branches dusted with fresh snow. Sunlight spilled across the quaint, ivy-covered chapel, nestled near a frozen lake, its stained glass windows glowing softly with the warmth of candles flickering inside. On this quiet winter morning, there were no paparazzi, no flashing cameras, no high-profile guests. Just family. Just peace. Tristan and Ava stood side by side on the steps of the chapel, their hands intertwined. This time there were no marble arches or glittering chandeliers, no fashion spreads or celebrity chefs. There was only truth between them and a vow they were both ready to renew, not for show but for survival, for healing and for love. Ava wore a simple white gown she'd picked herself from a boutique rack. Nothing custom, nothing extravagant. Her dark hair was swept into a soft braid, and her smile, gentle, guarded but genuine, carried the weight of everything they'd endured. Tristan stood in a navy blue suit, the same one he wore on their first wedding anniversary, a reminder of when their love had been fresh and unbroken. Inside, close friends and family filled the pews. Senator Carter and Lucille sat in the front row, proudly watching their daughter begin again. Isabel Ava's fiercely loyal best friend dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Even Dr. Friedman had flown in, delighted to see the premature twins he once monitored, now thriving, cooing in the arms of their grandmother as they gurgled through the quiet music. The chapel was adorned with white lilies, lavender, and flickers of gold ribbon. The air smelled of blossoms and soft incense, and a string quartet played a gentle arrangement of Clair de Lune as the couple stepped to the altar. The officiant, a close family friend who had known the Carters since Ava was a teenager, opened the ceremony with a few words about forgiveness and the resilience of love. He spoke of how life can break us apart and bring us together again, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. His voice echoed warmly through the chapel as snow began to fall outside, catching the light like silver feathers. Tristan turned to Ava, his voice thick with emotion. "I stand here today, not as the man I used to be, but as the man I strive to become for you, for Logan and Leon, and for the love I nearly destroyed. I promise to honor you, to be honest, to be present, every single day. I vow never to take our love for granted again." Ava blinked away tears. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "I never imagined we'd come back from where we were. But here we are, stronger, wiser, maybe even braver. I can't promise things will be easy, but I can promise to walk beside you with open eyes and an open heart as long as you meet me halfway." As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a tender kiss, the guests erupted in quiet applause. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the scandals, not the past, not the noise of public opinion. Just the two of them, and the two tiny souls watching from the pews with wide eyes and a future full of promise. Together again, but this time truly starting over. In the end, Tristan Alcott faced the harsh reality of his betrayal and nearly lost everything he held dear. Ava Carter, though deeply wounded, bravely confronted him, choosing to stand up for herself and their two beautiful sons. Helene Garcia, for all her cunning, found that deceitful paths often lead to empty victories. Yet beyond the drama, a powerful message emerged. Real love can endure trials and tribulations, but it demands honesty, respect, and genuine remorse. Thank you for joining us on this whirlwind journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and eventual redemption. If this story gripped your heart and kept you at the edge of your seat, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more real-life drama and gripping stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring you more tales of love loss and the surprising twists that make life so unpredictable.